Welcome to Eastown Online. My name is Clint Dupin. We're so excited to have you here at Eastown Online. And hey, I don't know if you noticed this, but we're back in the studio. And so starting this week, we are going to start to stream on Sundays at 10 a.m. from here on out. Now, our goal is to do live streaming from our services that actually take place in person on Sunday, but we're not quite there yet. So stay tuned for that. But we're so thankful that you are here with us. Now, I want you to do a couple of things. Before we start our service today, I want you to do a couple of things. I want you to check in. If you've never checked in with us before, if you're new here at Eastown, you've been watching for 6 months, maybe today is the day that you actually check in. Simply text Eastown, right, to 94000, and we will send you a gift. And I guarantee you, you will like this gift. And it's just to say thank you for connecting with us. Remember, you can always follow us on Facebook or Instagram to kind of see what is happening at Eastown. Make sure you download the Eastown Church app that kind of lets you know what is happening in the life of Eastown. Now, a couple of things that are coming up here that I want you to be aware of before we kick off our series today is this. The first one is our Freedom Walk. Our Freedom Walk is starting on it's on September 18th, which is a week from now in the afternoon. You can find out more information at easttown.church, what the Freedom Walk is all about, but you need to register for the Freedom Walk. Now, the Freedom Walk is to support our Love Local partner in a tangible way, which is Love Never Fails. We love what Love Never Fails is doing here in the Bay Area. There's lots of good that is happening in the Bay Area. There's some shady parts too, and one of those is human trafficking, and Love Never Fails is doing something about that, and we want to be a part of it. This is a way of not just supporting with our resources financially, we are actually going to get out and walk at Fremont High School in Oakland, and it's $25 per person. All the proceeds go to Love Never Fails. We're going to have dinner together. There's going to be an open auction where we give things away. We sell things where the proceeds will go to Love Never Fails. Make sure you sign up today, right now, when you hear this, on our Easttown Church app, or you can go online to do that as well. Something else I want to encourage you to do. For some of us, this journey is new for you. For some of you, it might not be that new for you. In fact, you've kind of deconstructed your faith over this past couple of years. You're just kind of in this space where it's like, what is happening in our world right now when it comes to faith, when it comes to religion, all of those different things? Well, Alpha is for you. I love what we do here on Sunday mornings, but I love Alpha, and it's something I've been a part of for 6 different times here at Eastown. It's a course that you can come in as you are with whatever questions, doubts, skepticism, whatever it is that you have, and you can be a part of an amazing discussion trying to figure out, who is Jesus? What is going on in this world? Where do I fit? We have dinner together. It's video driven. And then we just discuss. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no place you have to be. Make sure you sign up today. I would encourage you to bring a friend with you as well, so you don't come alone. Come test it out. Check it out. If you don't like it, don't stay a part of it. Not a big deal. Now, let's get started with our series today. And before we get launched into this, I want you to watch this.
I don't know how we're going to make this work once the baby arrives. Money is so tight right now. Katie's morning sickness is out of control. I know she feels miserable right now, but we're fighting so much. I hate it. I wish I could talk to my dad. Why did he have to die so young? I should probably get a checkup scheduled for myself. I know his heart thing was hereditary. I'm so anxious. I haven't been sleeping. My marriage feels like it's on the rocks. Everything feels like it's slithering.
Hey, how's it going?
Me? I'm great.
Now, I don't know about you, but you've probably done the same thing. Maybe not at a coffee shop, or you've not done it, I don't know where you've done it. You've just had all of these thoughts and all of this kind of this inner emotional, mental stuff that is happening. But when somebody says, "How are you doing?" or "Are you okay?" and you say, "It's fine." Because when we say it's fine, it's usually not fine, right? We use it as a way to get people to kind of just leave us alone when we're upset, or to avoid having to address an issue. And in fact, we spend loads of time and energy, money on things that are completely external, right? For example, I want to tell you about what's happening in my front yard right now. I have a mole issue. Some of you know about this mole issue. I'm going to show you a little picture here of my mole. And I hate what is happening because I love my yard. I love to take care of the yard, make it look good so my house looks good. I want things to look good, but there's something that is happening below the surface. In fact, I've tried to keep everything external looking good, but something underneath internal is happening, right? And the fact is, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think what's happening with the moles in my yard, they're developing like this bus system. And in fact, it feels like so many moles are in my yard. It's like, hey, this is where we're going to set up shop, right? This is what we're going to have happen. This is where it's going to be. This is mole headquarter. Well, I'm going to figure out what's happening. But we also do it in other ways, right? We spend loads of time and energy and money on things like personal hygiene, right? And in fact, one survey shows that the average American spends $200 a month, 22% of their disposable income, or about $2,388 a year on the physical, right? The external. And you see all of that. When you walk into people's bathrooms, you will see that. Now, almost every single one of us wants to portray an image that communicates that everything is good, that everything is okay. No matter what comes our way, we can handle it, and we can handle it well. But we know that life is hard and messy, don't we? And outward circumstances can catch us off guard, not to mention the inward struggles that no one can see. Everything is not okay, and that is okay. So we're going to tackle topics like doubt and divorce and anxiety, and of course, wondering, are my kids going to be okay? So we're going to look at that today and throughout the series. Let me pray. God, we just come to you, and we know that people that are joining us here today online, or maybe they're listening in their car right now. I don't know what it is, but Lord, help us get to the place where it's okay to not be okay. But let us not stay there. Let us make those steps that you invite us to take so naturally. In your name, amen. Before I start, I just want you to know this, that some of you that are listening and watching today, is like you're ready to give up. You feel like the world is against you. You feel like the things that are in your life, the burdens that you are carrying are way too heavy. Here's the thing that I know about Jesus. I want you to imagine him sitting here right now, looking at you and talking to you and saying, hey, those things that you're carrying, those things that you are struggling with, that weight that you're bearing is not yours to bear. That yoke is not yours. And in fact, let me take that from you. And I don't know where you are spiritually, but I don't even know what you believe spiritually. I don't know what you think about God. I don't know what you think about the church or Jesus. But if I could get you to the place just for the next 20 minutes, is just to inhale and exhale and just be in this moment and imagine Jesus starting to take some of those things that you are carrying around. Now, I want us today to think about what is happening on the inside. I want us to think about it as, we have our personal hygiene. I want you to think about it as emotional hygiene. Just like we talk about a personal hygiene, we're going to talk about our emotional hygiene. What is hygiene? It's the practice that keeps you healthy. So let's talk about what emotional hygiene is actually all about. Now, life expectancy grows, right, and grew sharply when people increased the time and the energy and the money they were spending on their outside hygiene, their personal hygiene. As the rate of disease decreased, the enjoyment of life dramatically increased. Now, we know what's at stake with our physical hygiene. What's at stake with our mental hygiene? What is at stake? That's something we don't think about very often. In much the same way that dental hygiene involves brushing our teeth and flossing every day, and personal hygiene involves cleaning ourselves and taking care of our physical injuries when we sustain them, emotional hygiene refers to being mindful of our physiological health and adopting brief daily habits to monitor and to address psychological wounds when we sustain them. So here's the question. What would change if our lives, if we spent as much time on our emotional hygiene as we do with our physical hygiene? Currently, our general neglect of our emotional hygiene is profound. How is it that we spend more time each day taking care of our teeth than our minds? I don't know if that's the same for my two sons, because I don't know if they brushed their teeth in the last 5 days. But we brush and we floss, but what daily activity or activities do we do to maintain our psychological health? I would argue the consequences of lacking emotional hygiene are much more worse than lacking dental hygiene. The later we choose to deal with stuff, the greater the consequences of it, right? Later problems become greater problems. Let me say that again. Later problems become greater problems. My assumption today is that you have a desire to change and grow. And that's why you're here. That's why you're listening. And people that don't want to, it's always a mystery to me. Why wouldn't you want a better version of yourself? You must have a desire to change and to grow. That's why you're here. There was this bumper sticker and it said this. It said, there are only 2 things I don't like. Number 1, change. And number 2, the way things are. Right? Have you ever felt that way? Right? It's not going to help you to stay that way. Right? It's like we have to work on change. And in fact, our minds, it's been proven time and time again, our minds don't want to change. Like you might deal with change better than some other people, but in fact, your brain is kind of working on survival. And it's like when anything change happens or comes, it's like we don't really want it. And in fact, this is what we have seen over this past 2 years is most of us have had to deal with beliefs that we have believed to be true for years of our lives. And when those things are called into question, it requires us to do what? To think. It might require us to change. It might require us to sacrifice some things. We've seen this here at Eastown. People want to be affirmed. I want to be affirmed so I don't have to change my views or my values or what I think. So what do? If you don't say what I like, and you're going to say something that might disagree with my values and who I am intrinsically, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just going to go find somewhere else that can affirm the way that I believe. But today, what I want to challenge you with is that I'm going to maybe inform you in some ways, not affirm, but inform and say, hey, in order to experience that change, I'm going to have to dive in to some of this stuff. Because this is so true that we don't like for things to change, but then none of us are content with the way things are, right? Which demands change. But we don't like that because we don't like the way it's going to feel, and we don't like what it's going to require of us, and we don't like what it's going to demand from us. So what do? We just allow things to persist. We just allow things to just continue in the status quo, and then we just say things, wait. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay. And what we do, we just shove it down, talking ourselves out of emotional hygiene. This is kind of what it looks like. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It's not my fault. And we never get in there. We say, oh, wait, it's fine, which basically just means I don't want to have to deal with it. Or we say things like, it's just not that big of a deal. So we have, what do? So what if we have some hurt from my childhood? What if I have some pain from my parents or divorce, or maybe from my own divorce, from the business that failed, or from that club I was a part of, or that college I didn't get into? Or what about the church? Maybe you're experiencing church hurt and church pain. It's not that big of a deal. It's just fine. And what do? We just continue to cover it up. Or we say things like, well, it's not my fault. I didn't do this. Somebody actually did this to me. Yeah, but you're the one carrying all the emotions of it, aren't you? You're the one carrying the feelings of it, that it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And it's my responsibility, right? So here's my hope for you in this series. My hope for you in this series would be that you wouldn't be scared to go back in your past and deal with some of these things. or that you wouldn't be afraid that it's not okay, or that there is something going on inside of me, or possibly my children. So let's look at, what does God have to say? Because to experience emotional hygiene that would lead to health, Jesus, there is a number of different places where he talks about and he teaches about this. And in fact, it seems to the people that were following him, people who were walking around and listening to him teach over and over, and he's saying the same thing again and again. He's recommending a way of life where people can actually use self-reflection or introspection to figure out what's really going on in here, because it's not fine. It's okay to not be okay. This is what Jesus is saying. It's time to dive a little bit deeper. There's one particular passage that we're going to read together. Now, I'm going to show you, but someone shared this with me recently, and I thought, you know what? I've never viewed it that way. I've never thought about it through that context. But I think what Jesus is asking us to do, really, it's challenging because it's very difficult. Because why? Because we would rather just point the finger versus look inside and deal with some of that pain. This is at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount is huge. It's a huge sermon. It's one of the best, it is the best delivered sermon of all time. And he gives it to these people, thousands of people on the hill, and they're listening. And the most profound pieces of literature is being displayed here by Jesus. So let's look at Matthew chapter 7, verse 3 through 5. It says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye?" Then he goes on here. It's pretty deliberate. "You hypocrite," right? "First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Now, this can be really, really helpful to anyone that is in a position that requires you to care for others. Like if you're in the medical field, or if you're in the field of education, or if you're a parent, or you feel like you're a parent. Especially for those of you who are caring for your older parents. You have to wrestle with this because Jesus says, hey, how can you help someone else if you haven't done the work of looking inside of yourself? You can't carry others well until you care for yourself well. Think about that. So what does he say? What is he saying here that can help us? Well, here's what I would do to challenge you to grow deeper in your understanding of what needs to happen in your own life. He says, "You hypocrite," right? Easy, Jesus. Like, what are you saying? He's like, no, listen, seriously, because it's kind of hypocritical for you to call out the speck when you got the plank in your own eye. So why don't you go try and do this? He says, first, take the plank out of your own eye. Deal with that inside first. And then you'll see clearly to be able to remove the speck from your brother's eye. That if you want to be a person that is helpful to other people, you've got to be emotionally aware of what's really going on inside of you. You can't care for somebody else's stuff. You can't help somebody else with their stuff until you've done the work to figure out what's going on inside of me. Maybe we can say it another way. You can't get to where you want to be until you exactly know where you are, right? Isn't this true in life? To get to be where you want to be, you got to know where you are, right? And I think for me, it's like a lot of times, just change my environment, get me to a new place, in a new relationship, a new job. We see this all the time. Get me to a new environment, a new church, a new career, then everything will be okay. And I've heard people say this all the time. It's, guess what? Wherever you go, there you are. You're taking your stuff with you because you've never really dealt with it. You just keep projecting it. We just keep pointing fingers and we don't feel okay inside. But if I keep pointing, if I keep gaslighting, if I keep distracting, then no one will really know what's going inside and it's eating you up inside and you are dying. Do you know where you are emotionally? So this week, all I really want to do is just to introduce you to this topic and then just say, hey, let's be people that are more emotionally curious. That's it. Let's be people that are more emotionally aware. And so if you were to say to me, okay, well, then what do I do then if I'm aware? That would be fantastic if we could just start there. If you could ask me that, because that's what's coming up on my next, like even down here further in my outline, I would say this. I would say, great question. Let's talk about that. This is what I would try to do. This is what I'm trying to actually do right now, is what are those next steps? But here's a truth I want you to hang on to. This is really important. You can't get to where you go. I said this earlier. You can't get to where you want to be until you know exactly where you are. The first thing I want you to do is pay attention to emotional pain. Pain gets our attention. It allows us to see our failings, where we fall short, where for us, where they really are and the danger they pose to our souls. And we've talked a lot about that over this past summer. Self-reflection is the skill of taking yourself apart every single day. It's the difference between self-care and self-centeredness. We can't help take care of others until we are caring for ourselves as well. If you are bored, right, with the Bible, if you've ever tried to read the Bible on your own, you really ought to jump into Psalm, because it can relate. Almost any scripture, any passage can relate. And there's nothing boring about it. In fact, the author is yelling at God every once in a while, and then he's got him on his knees and he's weeping and he's begging for his life, right? It's up and down. It is so good. It's invigorating, right? To read the scripture and to know how it relates to us, how introspective this author can become in Psalms and how it relates to us. I want to show you. I want to point out a couple examples. And the first one is this, where David says in Psalm chapter 4, verse 4, when you are on your bed. So he's telling us, like, he's giving us practical steps here. When you are on your beds or in your beds, search your hearts and be silent, which is not what most of us do, right? Because most of us would be like, can I take my phone with me, David? Can I just kind of scroll through my phone while I'm sitting in bed? He would have told you no, right? And I would love to encourage you that way as well, that when you are lying down at night, be silent, be quiet and listen. You know those people that fill their life constantly, that they're always watching Netflix, they're always listening to a podcast, that they're always scrolling on their phone. We don't know how to be silent and listen like David is requiring. Why? So that you can know what's really happening, so that you can know what's really going on, so that you can know what you're feeling, so that you can experience the emotions that you are actually experiencing. Some of you are like, that sounds scary, right? I'd rather watch the Blair Witch Project. Anyways, right? That sounds scary. It might not be, it might be kind of scary. I just want to acknowledge that. It might be difficult at first. But he says there needs to be a routine in your life where you're kind of just paying attention to that emotional pain. Remember, emotional curiosity requires quiet and solitude. Maybe for some of you, it's not when you're lying in bed. Maybe it's that hike that you do by yourself. If it takes 15 minutes of boredom before kids get creative, it's going to take you a few minutes of solitude to get you thinking about what's really there. Listen to what he says in Psalm 139. He says, search me. This is what you can do when you're silent. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me and lead me into the everlasting. David models for us a ruthless curiosity of what he's feeling as he's measured against the standard of God that he's prescribed. He's saying to God, if it's offensive to you, it's not healthy for me. I was with this young man even just this morning, and it was amazing how honest he was. And I asked him several of these questions. I was like, what's going on in your heart? And he began to we don't even know each other that well. He just began to be really honest. This is what's happened. This is what's currently happening in my life. And here's the emotions I'm feeling. I'm like, man, where do you think that that's connected to? Or what's that connected to? And he began to tell me about different events that's happened in his life. And I'm sitting there listening and all, but there's another part of me like almost jealous. I'm like, man, how honest he is and how free he is to share what is actually going on inside. And I even said that to him. I said, I appreciate your honesty. It sounds like you've allowed God to search your heart. And like I'm just envious of that honesty, not in a bad or negative way, but it's like, man, there's something about us where we just cover up and we just say it's fine and we move on. See, if there's anything offensive in me, God, is there anything? In other words, you're the standard, God. You're the bar, right? Investigate, help me to be reflective and help me to compare it to what you would have for me. He's saying, hey, be curious about what you're experiencing. Have you noticed the power of curiosity in life? Curiosity is a phenomenal thing. The art of asking questions, learning to ask good questions, not just of other people, but of yourself. Why is curiosity so helpful? Because it breeds humility. Why is curiosity so helpful? Because it breeds humility. Can you imagine if our world was more curious even with each other? But it starts with you. Be curious with your own emotions. It helps us to find a place that's humble because it's arrogant people who don't ask questions. Have you ever noticed this? If you have ever noticed that arrogant people don't ask questions, why don't arrogant people ask questions? Because they already know everything. They don't have anything to ask, right? And people that are arrogant about themselves don't ask any questions of themselves. They don't ask, why am I feeling that way? What is actually going on in there? What am I really experiencing? Why is it in there? It's the art of being ruthlessly curious with what you're really experiencing. David did it all the time. And then after you pay attention to that emotional pain, what if you then, number 2, decided, okay, I'm going to recognize the wide array of emotions. I'm going to recognize that we are emotional beings. We are created to feel things, and it's not just happiness, sadness, and anger. No, there's way more than that, right? So if that's the first thing, the second thing is this: recognize that wide array of emotions. Now, I know for me as a man, sometimes that's really hard. And this is super important for us as men. And I'm not excluding anyone out there. I'm just inviting you into my own experience. Why? Because we've been told that our feelings are not that masculine, right? Our whole lives we've been taught to say things like real men don't cry or man up, suck it up, right? And so what do? We push it down. I don't want to show my emotion that might be hurt or that hurt me right now. Now, one of the most powerful things to do, one of the most courageous things to do is say, no, you know what? I'm actually going to feel what I'm experiencing right now. I'm actually going to face and dive into my emotions so that I can be a better husband, a better dad, better at the relationship that I'm in, a better coach, a better teacher, a better leader, or maybe just a better follower of Jesus. One of the things that my counselor gave to me when we first started meeting was this thing called the wheel of emotions, right? All these different feelings. And I will often look at this. It's actually on my wall. And what is that feeling or that emotion that I'm actually connected to? You can actually Google this and download it. It's pretty amazing. I'm going to show it to you right now, this wheel of emotion. And then it kind of helps you, what must I do? Right? What's the next thing I do? What's that feeling connected to? What's the next right move? You might even need to learn a new vocabulary for specific emotions. When adults lack an emotional vocabulary, they also typically lack the skills to regulate themselves in moments of elevated emotions, right? We just go with whatever feeling that we are, and we must, whatever emotion or feeling that we're experiencing in that moment, it must be true. Well, we know that that is not true. What are you feeling? What should you do with that feeling? And we're going to talk more about this last point all throughout this series. And the last one is this: make a determination for that emotion. Make a determination for the emotion. What are the habits we need to make a determination? It may be to recognize when you're tired, when you're hungry, or you're hurting, right? Emotions are this. Emotions are messengers. Like they're delivering a message. What am I actually feeling? Why am I feeling it? So that's what we're talking about, emotional hygiene. First thing is we recognize what I'm feeling. The second thing is knowing what to do with that feeling. And then why on earth do I have this experience? Can I just skim the surface and not really touch where I'm really feeling upset, that deep emotion? So here's, in closing, I want to say this. My hope for you today was just that you would be more open and more aware so that we could all eventually, maybe even over the next couple weeks, either a few weeks, experience more emotional hygiene. That is what emotional hygiene might look like for you and for me, is just number one, to recognize what we're feeling, to recognize what I'm feeling. Would you be willing to just stop and go, I'm just going to recognize that? It's going to be making ourselves aware of it. I'm not just going to be curious about it. And then maybe over the next few weeks, we can figure it out. How do we know what to do with it? No, we want to step into it now. How do we know what to do with what we are feeling? I know this seems a little elementary, but I know that for me, one of the things that stands between me and my wife too often is that I don't enter into what I'm feeling or what she's feeling. I don't want my kids to get to be adults and say, you know what, my dad never really knew my heart. He knew my schedule, but he really didn't know my heart. I don't want my friends to say, yeah, he was around, but he was never really there. He wasn't present. He was never really paying attention to what was really going on. And I'm telling you that the thing that stands between you and a better you and a healthier you, might just be what you're feeling, might just be your emotions. So here's what I would love to do, just because we have the time and because you're here and you're watching. And why wouldn't we do this? I would love to spend just a couple of minutes asking our Father in heaven to help us with this. And here's the beauty of our Heavenly Father, as He says, I am not going to leave you to do this on your own. I'm going to enter into it with you. I'm going to be a part of the process. I'm going to be a part of this journey. That's what God seems to really love, is when we take Him ourselves and we say, we're inviting you in to the process with us. Psalm 51 says this, you do not delight in sacrifice, or I would bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. You, God, will not despise. David is saying God is honored by a spirit of humility. Why? Because humility begins with curiosity. And maybe the greatest thing that God wants from you is you. Hey, I'm so thankful that you joined us today. I'm so thankful that you are entering into this new season with us. I would continue to invite you to make this a part of your weekly routine. Not that it's an activity, but it's a lifestyle, that it's a new life rhythm, is that you join with us. And as always, I want to just say this. Thank you for your generosity. I want to invite those of you, maybe you've never been generous here at Eastown. Maybe today is your day. Maybe this year is a new year. I invite you to even just test God out when it comes to your giving and your generosity. One of the things that we have is, and you can find this on Eastown Church, eastown.church/give, is there's easy ways to enter into this generosity journey. And the first one is Roundup, right? Anytime you start giving through Roundup, 100% of that goes to our Love Local partners. And then we talk about reoccurring. Anything that's important to you, it's reoccurring, right? That phone bill, that you've joined a workout club. Like it's something that you pay every single month. Well, we believe what God is doing here at Eastown is important enough that it becomes reoccurring. So maybe this is where you start thinking about how much do I actually, how often am I generous? Maybe start doing that right now. You can do that. And then we talk about relational giving. This is when we get to our motivation for giving stops being about me, but what God is doing in me. I'm going to give this back to God. I'm going to give this to the church and entrust God with my finances. That's relational giving. And then there's radical giving, right? Radical is above and beyond. So for our family, what we do right from the very beginning is 10%. The first thing we do is we give 10% back to the church. And then above and beyond, there's other things that we're involved in where we say, hey, we want to be generous. We want to have the ability to be generous. Let me just tell you, whenever Jesus talks about generosity, it requires a sacrificial lifestyle. Why? We want to be reminded that money isn't going to control us, that our finances aren't going to control us. We're going to control it by doing what God asks of us to do. So thank you again for your generosity. Thank you for being with us. And we are excited to be with you next week as we continue this journey. It's okay to not be okay. It's going to be great. We're talking about doubt. We always are dealing with something that we doubt. We'll see you next week.
Truth is harder than a lie. The dark seems safer than the light. And everyone has a heart that loves to hide. I'm a mess and so are you. We build walls nobody can get through. But the best thing we could ever do. Bring your brokenness and I'll bring mine. 'Cause love can heal what hurt divides. Mercy's waiting on the other side. If we're honest, if we're honest, don't pretend to be something that you're not. Living life afraid of getting caught. There is freedom found when we lay our secrets down at the cross, at the cross. So bring your brokenness and I'll bring mine. 'Cause love can heal what hurt divides. Mercy's waiting on the other side. If we're honest, if we're honest, it would change our lives, it would set us free. It's what we need to be. Bring your brokenness and I'll bring mine. 'Cause love can heal what hurt divides. Mercy's waiting on the other side. If we're honest, if we're honest, if we're honest, if we're honest.